So you've been watching the Marvel Netflix shows, correct?
A couple of them. I watched Jessica Jones, Daredevil, and The Defenders.
So you watched all 3 seasons of Jessica Jones and Daredevil?
Yeah,
And none of Luke Cage or Iron Fist or The Punisher?
correct.
Are you planning on watching any of those?
From The Defenders, I didn't really like the actor who was Iron Fist,
Okay.
so that turned me off of that.
A lot of people didn't like him in general. I did.
Yeah.
Although I did think that as a show, Iron Fist was terrible.
Oh, so that gives me even less reason to watch it.
Yeah, don't watch it. I would definitely say don't watch it.
Okay.
I did like Luke Cage, though, overall.
I liked when he showed up in Jessica Jones, and I liked him in The Defenders, so I would be willing to check that out.
So I guess I'll say I've watched all of Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist. Oh, I have not seen season 3 of Jessica Jones. I'm about halfway through. And I saw the first season of The Punisher. So I was watching them in the order that they were coming out, and you watched them after the fact, kind of.
Yeah, it was pretty recent. It was just because I needed something to watch.
Yeah, so our experiences would have been different, because I'm sure they would have referenced some things where you'd be like, I don't really know what they're talking about. But for the most part, I think Daredevil and Jessica Jones stand alone more than Iron Fist or Luke Cage do.
It felt that way. I didn't feel lost.
Okay. Well, I will also say that I'm a big Marvel Comics fan. So, I already knew all these characters and everything. And I was pleasantly surprised with pretty much all the casting choices in all these shows, other than The Punisher, but we'll get to The Punisher. I guess let's talk about Daredevil a little bit first. I really liked the guy that played Matt Murdock. I thought he was great in the civilian side, where he doesn't come off as a superhero type guy. He just seems like a normal blind guy. But he was also convincing in the Daredevil role. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And I was also really surprised that they found someone to play the Kingpin that really worked. Vincent D'Onofrio I thought was great. I couldn't think of anybody good to play him, but they found somebody.
Yeah, I wasn't sure at the beginning because my vision of the Kingpin is the comic book one, where he's the size of a house.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, I thought he did a great job.
I really like the fact that they went with a much darker tone than the Marvel movies do. And they also didn't have quite as much of the dumb jokes and stuff. I mean, humor is a big part of the Marvel comics, but the humor in the movies tends to be really broad and really obvious, where you kind of see the jokes before they even come, and they all feel kind of the same.
Yeah.
But the Netflix shows, I think, do a much better job of being serious when they need to be serious, being humorous at times, but without making it feel like a complete tonal disconnect.
Let's talk about Karen Page.
Okay.
I disliked how, as the series went on, she became an expert in everything. Despite just sitting at a desk on a computer by herself.
I see what you mean. I feel like that's the way sort of private investigators work in real life, is they just kind of sit at a computer and figure things out.
Yeah, but against that, she wasn't even a private investigator at first. She was just a person who was helping out.
That's true, but I feel like she was motivated enough. And I mean, you can find out anything on the internet.
You can?
So I don't know. I didn't really have a problem with it.
It wasn't the fact that she was finding stuff out about people. It was that she became an expert in so many different fields. And she would relay all that information to the other characters.
Okay. It's been a little bit since I watched those. These aren't as fresh in my mind as they are with you, because you saw them more recently, so...
And again, it's just my opinion. It's been a while since I finished this one, too.
Yeah, I feel like I probably would agree if I had watched them more recently, I'm assuming. I thought it was weird that they waited until the last episode of the first season to give Daredevil his costume. It's like they were really building up to it, but in the context of the show, it doesn't matter. It's just a costume. I thought it was weird.
So you're arguing they didn't even need to give him his costume at all?
No, I just thought it was weird that they put so much emphasis on it.
Yeah.
That it was kind of part of the climax.
I agree, and I feel that on the part of the showrunners, they didn't want to give it to him too early, because then it would just seem gimmicky, but like you said, the way it does build up, it feels gimmicky anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I think that probably was their perspective, but yeah, it did come off weird. Also, I thought it looked weird from the face. There was something about it that just looked off, and I actually thought his black costume looked a lot better.
Okay.
I liked the way the first season played out, where he's kind of taking down one branch of the underworld at a time. That way you can build up Wilson Fisk at the same time and have him feel like a real looming threat in the background that he's got to get to. But then that final episode I thought was really dumb, where it's just a slugfest in an alley.
Yeah.
And it felt much less convincing than the fight scenes that we had gotten throughout the rest of the season.
Definitely. Season 2, I remember being weaker than 1 and 3.
Agreed. The first half of it felt very detached from the second half, where you go from the Punisher to the Hand. I really don't like the guy that plays the Punisher. As an actor, I don't really like him, and I also don't like this depiction of the character. It did not feel like the Punisher from the comics to me. He kept doing things that didn't seem to make sense, like firing guns in the middle of a hospital. And they did the same thing with him, where they didn't give him his skull on his shirt until the end. And then you haven't seen the Punisher, but right at the beginning, he gets rid of his skull. And then he gets it again at the end of the season. I don't understand. It's weird. I did like how they set up the hand in the first season, though. I thought the best episode of the first season was the one with Stick. I thought Stick was awesome.
Yeah.
Scott Glenn, he's cool in everything I've seen him in, and he was awesome.
He gave me a drunk David Carradine vibe.
I could see that, yeah. A lot of people had problems with the kind of supernatural stuff that they threw in with the hand. I don't know if it's because I'm familiar with the comics, but I was okay with it. I thought it was kind of cool seeing, like, a bunch of ninjas attacking a hospital.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
I think that really speaks to your inner 11-year-old.
Yeah.
What would have made it even cooler is if Alien and Predator had showed up and fought them all.
What about Elektra? What did you think of Elektra?
It's been a while since I finished the show.
In the comics, I always thought she was kind of an uninteresting character because writers never seem to know what approach to take with her, whether she's a good character or a bad character, or what she's really doing, what her real motivations are. Obviously, the original Frank Miller run is great, but she dies at the end of that, and it's not a very long run. Anything after that always felt kind of muddled to me. And I thought the show did a great job of giving her an actual personality, making her feel like a real person, and then skipping a little bit ahead to the Defenders. They bring her back with no personality at all, which is kind of like in the comics, and it's not a good thing in this case.
Yeah, and they tried to explain it by saying she's just a shell of her former self or whatever.
Yeah, which is fine in theory, but it really takes away from the drama when you don't have anything to react to because she's just a zombie, basically.
Especially because Matt Murdock is still approaching her as her past self, but he's getting nothing in return, which is supposed to make him feel sad, but it doesn't really work in the writing.
Yeah, and especially the way she kind of replaced Sigourney Weaver halfway through as the main villain. You go from an actual character to a blank slate, which really diminished everything in the second half of The Defenders for me.
Yeah, I thought Sigourney Weaver was awesome in that, though.
Yeah, if they had kept her around, it would have been better.
I thought it was funny how, for the other members of the Hand, she kept giving off a mom vibe to me.
Yeah, I got that too.
Like
yeah.
She's talking to her unruly children.
Well, let's go back to Season 3. Season 3 introduced Bullseye, and they managed to do it in a way that I thought wasn't stupid, because I feel like you run a big risk of Bullseye being the really dumb character that just has the gimmick of being able to hit everything perfectly.
I know. When you explain his character to somebody, they always go, okay. It's hard.
Yeah, that's perfect.
It's
yeah.
hard to adequately describe him the way the show does it, because it always sounds stupid.
To me, it's kind of like Green Arrow, where you say he's an archer, or Hawkeye, the same thing. And it's like, oh, that's it? Okay. It just sounds like a dumb gimmick.
Right.
But I thought they handled him really well.
I like the haphazard way he just throws stuff. Like, he doesn't have to think about it. He just picks shit up and throws it without looking, and it always goes where he wants it to.
And I really liked the actor that played him, too. He had the right amount of creepiness.
Yes.
I liked how they kept Wilson Fisk in the background, too, throughout Season 2, and then brought him back out in Season 3, and made him feel like a bigger threat. And it was pretty accurate to the comics, because he's always kind of in the background manipulating things. So I thought that was cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, do you feel like the writers wanted to bring him back as the main villain throughout Season 2?
You mean, like, for the future?
Well, in Season 3, he is up in the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, it was clear that he was going to come back. I mean, he's too big of a character to just kind of brush aside,
Wow.
Especially since they got such a good depiction for him going there.
Such a big character. Wow. Okay.
And given that all these shows have been canceled, I thought Season 3 ended very well.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like a conclusion. It was very satisfying.
Definitely.
Unlike Luke Cage when you get to that, which ends on a cliffhanger, believe it or not.
Oh.
Spoiler.
Great. Now I know someone's going to be hanging from a cliff.
One last thing I'll say about Daredevil is in the second and third seasons, it felt like they were trying to one-up themselves in terms of their action scenes. And I think they went way too far, and they made them feel way too showy. They felt way less realistic than they did in the first season, and to me were way less effective.
Oh, yeah. I liked the fight scenes in the first season. They were very raw.
They felt very grounded,
Yeah.
very realistic for what they were. And Season 2 is like watching a Marvel movie. It was very disappointing.
Should have gone the way of They Live. That's what I want to see.
All right, let's move on to Jessica Jones. I thought the first episode of Jessica Jones was great. It really pulled me in, really got me invested in everything, really made me intrigued. I thought it was great.
Initially, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about her character. I was afraid it was going to turn out to be too goofy, but I think part of what made it work for me was the other characters are not also very, I don't want to say comic booky or cartoony, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like there's the risk of her feeling too stereotypical. The sort of down on her luck detective that's, a drunk and
An asshole to everybody.
yeah. I like the actress, and I do like how the character is written. I will say she doesn't really feel like Jessica Jones in the comics to me. She feels like a separate character completely. But I don't mind it because I think the show does a really good job overall.
Yeah, I like how much depth they gave her as it went on. It wasn't just that superficial, I'm a jerk.
Yeah. I really, really liked David Tennant
Oh, yeah.
as Kilgrave,
For sure.
known in the comics as the Purple Man.
Which,
Very intimidating name.
why drop that name? Keep it.
He also has purple skin in the comics. So, yeah.
Was that really necessary for you to tell me? I would have assumed already he was purple.
I mean, not just purple skin, but purple suit, purple tie, purple underwear. I assume. I don't know for sure about that part.
I imagine him spitting on the sidewalk and it being purple.
That was Daredevil number 77.
Or someone walking into a bathroom, looking in the toilet and being like, I think somebody's really sick. This is purple. Is his character in the comics the same as the show?
Basically,
He was intriguing on the show.
I mean, he first showed up way back in Daredevil number 4, where since he could control everyone around him, he was basically unbeatable. But of course, Daredevil was immune for whatever reason and managed to beat him. He was one of those characters where his power is too powerful, so they didn't really use him that much because it was too hard to figure out a way, I'm assuming that's why, to beat him.
I'm going to assume it wasn't a virus, like they said in the show.
I think he had some kind of chemical spilled on him.
Typical.
Yeah, I mean, just like Daredevil. Doctor Doom did use him to take over the world at one point in the 80s in a standalone graphic novel, so that shows how powerful he is. But in the newer comics, Jessica Jones didn't show up until about 2006, I think. And in those comics, it was basically the same as the show where Kilgrave had controlled her and all that. That was all in the comics. So it is kind of a newer depiction of the character, I guess. He was always a bit more generic back in the day.
Who made him? Do you know?
Daredevil number 4 was written by Stan Lee and illustrated by Joe Orlando.
I'm just the purple man. I imagine in the writing process, someone was like, that character, the purple man. He was like, done. Thanks for the name. Marvel method.
Yeah, I mean, Daredevil had a lot of weird villains early on, like Frogman and Stiltman and the Matador, who is just a guy who dresses like a matador. He doesn't have any powers or anything.
What do you got against matadors?
Well, they don't make great supervillains.
Well, okay.
And Purple Man fit right in with all those weird characters. The Owl, who's a guy that just looks kind of like an owl. He doesn't have any powers.
Kind of like an owl.
Yeah. Daredevil was the poor man's Spider-Man. He had all the kind of the lame cast-off villains.
Well, Spider-Man had some shitty ones too. You got the Walrus.
Yeah, well, the Walrus didn't show up until way later, and I'm pretty sure he was meant to be a joke. Well, he definitely was meant to be a joke, because he had the powers of a walrus, which, I mean...
But the Purple Man was not.
But no, the Purple Man was meant to be a legit villain.
Okay.
There's a reason he's not very well remembered. I really like the way that first season kind of gives you her backstory in flashbacks that are not boring or intrusive. You actually care about what's going on and you want to get that information. And you also have the strong driving plot line in the present, where you really wonder how they're going to manage to beat this guy. He's a real big threat and genuinely creepy, and you want to see him get taken out, but you don't know how they're going to manage to do it.
Talking about characters, Simpson, the cop, his character in the comics was Nuke, correct?
Yes. He was also a Daredevil villain, who in the comics has an American flag tattoo on his face.
I assume that's where the red, white, and blue pills came from in the show.
Yes.
Does he take those actual pills in the comics too? Because that seemed pretty goofy. It seems like it would fit in a comic.
Yeah, I had a big problem with him in the show, because he didn't fit with everything else.
Well, they kind of wrote him out too, because he didn't fit.
I don't feel like they wrote him out like that. I think they did what they wanted to do with him. I just feel like it felt like too much of a completely different thing. It felt kind of dumb. That was definitely the weak point of that first season for me.
Yeah, when he would show up and he would just do stuff, or even when he would do stuff off on the side and then tell other characters, I did this, just to throw a wrench in the works without having any real purpose.
Yeah, they had such a strong main antagonist. They should have just focused on that.
Yeah.
Which is one complaint that a lot of people, including myself, have about these shows, is that they're just too long. Instead of being 13 episodes, I feel like they should have cut them all down to 10, or maybe even shorter. I think they would have all benefited from that. Season 2 brings in Jessica's mom. I like the fact that things don't go the way you're expecting with that, but it wasn't as strong of a storyline as the first season.
Yeah, I would agree. Also, the starting and the unraveling of Trish Walker.
Oh, yeah. I'm not a huge fan of her character in the show. She seems a bit too whiny.
Well, the third season was based on her just being whiny.
Yeah. She is a minor character in the comics. She was an Avenger way before Jessica Jones ever showed up. Actually, she was a character back in the 50s, I think, back before she became a superhero in just kind of one of their girl comics. So it's kind of funny the path that her character has taken over the years, but I was not super fond of her in the show.
Season 2. Oh, this also happened in Daredevil and the Defenders, I guess, where everyone just starts to have sex with everybody else.
Yeah.
As soon as a character walks in a room, even if they're just a temporary character, you know they're going to have sex with somebody.
I call that the HBO effect. And that's part of why I don't have any interest in most HBO shows. I feel like they're all kind of the same like that. That was a disappointing aspect. It didn't bother me in as much as it does with something like Game of Thrones. I think just because everything else tends to be pretty strong. But I did find it annoying.
What about Carrie-Anne Moss's character?
Well, she's a man in the comics. And she's fat. Or he's fat, I guess.
That's interesting, because I thought she did a good job.
Yeah, she does. I feel like all the characters in Jessica Jones are unlikable, which makes it surprising that, I don't know, makes it surprising to me that I like the show so much, because I don't really like any of the characters for the most part as people. She's basically a completely different character for the show. She's got the same name, she's still a lawyer, but she's a completely different character.
Yeah, she had a lot of backstory and stuff. What about Malcolm? I thought he went from being very likable and kind of a more realistic character, so all these things going on around him.
More sympathetic.
Yeah, but by season 3, he just stood around with that same serious expression on his face all the time, just in the back of a room.
Yeah, I wondered if my impression was that they initially kind of said, we need to have some more characters in here, and they just kind of made one up and said, well, there's this guy named Malcolm, and then they kind of said, well, we got to do something with him, so they kind of did stuff as they went along. I don't know. I mean, I thought it worked well enough.
Yeah, but by the end, he didn't really seem to do much. In season 1 and 2, I liked him. But in season 3, he didn't really do anything except take his shirt off.
Well, again, I'm halfway through season 3, but so far I would agree. I will say that I really like the villain of season 3.
Yeah.
Salinger. In the comics, he's a guy called the Fool Killer.
Wait, Fool
who wears
Killer?
a really dumb costume, yeah. And uses a gun that vaporizes people.
That's awesome.
He's kind of, when he showed up in the comics, he was kind of supposed to be, I wouldn't call him a parody. He's not parodying any specific character, but he's kind of supposed to be a goofy character.
Does he shout before he shoots someone, "You fool"? I would like that.
He spouts out weird Shakespearean stuff and talks about fools being, I don't know, what ruins the earth or whatever, and that it's his job to exterminate them.
So what you're saying is the actor that should have played him was Patrick Stewart.
Yes, that would have been awesome in a completely different way.
I'm just trying to picture Patrick Stewart on a roof with a sniper rifle. I just can't.
Yeah, the light glinting off of his bald head would give his position away. What did you think of the way Luke Cage is introduced in the first season of Jessica Jones? Because he shows up there before he got his own show.
Okay. No, I thought it was good.
Would you have thought that he was coming in from another show?
Not necessarily. I thought he did a good job with his introduction. I thought it was a little odd that he showed up again in season 3 after so much had happened. Was that just to get them prepped for the Defenders?
No, the Defenders came out between the first 2 seasons of Jessica Jones, I think.
Really?
So I haven't gotten up to him showing up in season 3 yet, so okay. I'll see what happens. What did you think of the way they handled the references to the movies?
I thought it was way more prevalent in the first season. A lot of characters, even the cops, were all referencing the Avengers.
Yeah.
But I was okay with it, I guess. I could see from the perspective of wanting to get people invested in this show and already knowing that a lot of people were invested in the movies, that would be hopefully a successful hook to pull them in. But I don't know. It didn't do anything for me.
I thought Jessica Jones did a good job of playing with the fact that she is living in a world that has a lot of other superpowered people in it. That she's not special in that sense. I mean, Daredevil is a little bit more focused on just those characters and kind of the criminal underworld. But Jessica Jones is more about openly being a powered person in a world where people kind of have uneasy feelings about that. And I thought they did a good job with that aspect of it, but there are times when the specific references feel a little too on the nose and kind of stupid sometimes when it's almost like they say, well, we don't want to come right out and say Captain America, so we're going to say the guy in the red, white, and blue or something like that, or the big green monster or whatever. I thought that was kind of dumb. And I don't know if you're aware of this, probably not. Well, I assume.
Thanks.
But yeah, the higher-ups at Marvel, kind of between the movie division of things and the TV show division of things, really started butting heads as they went on, and kind of each trying to do their own thing, which is why there's kind of less connections as it goes on. The TV shows kind of become more isolated, and of course the movies never reference anything from the TV shows. So if the shows hadn't been canceled, I mean, it seems like they kind of would have had to go and do something completely different given all the stuff that happened in the movies with Thanos and all that. So I don't know how they would have handled that, but I am disappointed that they got canceled because I definitely like them a lot more than the movies. So would you recommend the ones that you watched to other people?
I think overall, yes. They've all definitely had their lower points when I almost kind of lost interest, but it swung back up by the end. And I also don't know, because the way we watch things now, if it would have been different if I hadn't just watched a bunch of episodes in a row, if I had actually spread it out.
Right.
You know, the way we used to watch things.
That's still the way I watch things. I hate sitting down and watching the same show over and over again.
I forgot you
for
were
the most part.
85 years old. Why don't you just take your flip phone, get your skip it, and just hop on out of here.
I would also recommend these shows, except for Iron Fist. Also, Defenders was kind of boring. Even though it was only 8 episodes, it felt way longer.
I did Defenders right after Daredevil, before Jessica Jones.
Interesting.
I did it to see which other shows I might be interested in based on those characters.
Okay. I mean, there are story elements that would get spoiled depending on what order you watch things in.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody out there who hasn't seen these, I definitely recommend watching them in the order that they came out. And you can only watch certain shows. You don't have to watch all of them to understand what's happening. But if you are planning on watching all of them, there are things that might get spoiled. And we've probably spoiled a bunch of them in this video anyway, so. You're welcome. Thanks for watching our video.
We appreciate it.
We plan to keep producing quality content.
Well, content, at least.
Well, we'll do our best.
Well, speak for yourself.
Okay, half-ass it then on your end. We're used to that at this point.